Good morning. Education changes lives, and St Anne's certainly changed mine. I'm Stella Charman. I read PPE between 1975 and 1978, and I'm currently president of the St Anne's Society, of which you are all members if you studied at St Anne's from the date you matriculated. In the early days of the Society, 100 years ago, young men and women were returning to Oxford full of expectation and enthusiasm. The Great War was finally over, and educational careers disrupted by both the conflict and subsequent flu pandemic could start once again. Women, for the first time, could be awarded a degree, and this year we're celebrating 100 years of women's degrees at Oxford. In normal times, the St Anne's Society would have organised a seminar on this theme for you to enjoy in a lecture theatre back at St Anne's as part of the annual Gawdy and Oxford Alumni Weekend. But these are far from normal times. Today, just as they were in 1920, we are acutely conscious of the negative impact of being deprived of the opportunity to learn. We know better than ever before that education is the passport to the future, and that understanding the world is essential to making it better. And that, of course, is the overarching purpose of St Anne's, never more relevant than it is right now. So, to replace our usual seminar, we've invited some current students and alumni to share, in a series of short videos, their perspectives on the importance of equality of access to education and how it makes a difference to individual lives. Each contributor will introduce themselves to you, and I want to thank them all enormously for the time and trouble they have taken to consider these issues and present you with a fascinating set of think pieces. I hope you will enjoy listening to them and that they will prompt some ideas for discussion later on. Let's hear them.
Hi, my name's Gagan Singh Khurana, and I'm in a bit of a weird place right now. I'm meant to be introducing myself, and it's really weird because I'm going from the period of saying I study physics at St Anne's to I studied physics at St Anne's. I've only just graduated, having matriculated in 2017, and it's a really strange place to be given everything that's gone on. So it's weird, coming to the realization that I'm done with my time at St Anne's. I'm meant to be answering two questions today. Firstly, what does equality in education mean to me as an alumnus of St Anne's? And then on the other side, the question is, what difference has an education at St Anne's made on my life? And I'll answer that one too. The first one, I think, can be broken down into sort of three key parts. I think equality in education, to me, means three things. It means equality in access to education, it means equality in experience of education, and it means equality in outcome of education. And I'll talk about all three of those in a little bit more detail. I think inequality of access of education, what that means to me is anyone, regardless of their background, should be able to access a fantastic quality education like the one at St Anne's. And I think that comes about two routes, right? That comes from the top down sort of government level initiatives to try and improve access to great educational institutions like St Anne's in Oxford. And I think it comes from the bottom up as well. I think it comes from places like St Anne's going out and encouraging people who wouldn't necessarily normally apply to somewhere like Anne's, and telling them that, there is a place for you here. And I know that Anne's does a lot of fantastic work on that front, especially in the north of England. I think the next thing that it's worth sort of mentioning is the equality of experience of education. And in a way, where access is what happens before someone arrives at a place like Oxford, I think the equality of experience is what happens whilst you're at a place like Oxford, and at a place like St Anne's. I think everything in equality of experience basically talks about how, whilst you're at a place like Oxford, regardless of who you are, you should be able to enjoy the same sorts of things as someone else from a slightly different background. And that you shouldn't feel financially constrained or feel like you can't do something as a result of who you are and where you've come from. And I think there's a lot of different ways of doing that. And that basically just means making it an incredibly open space where people can be themselves and take part in both college life and wider university life whilst they're in education. The final thing that I think equality in education needs to account for is equality in outcome of education. And by that I mean, almost if we had the beginning being access, the middle being experience, the ending is then the outcome, whereby education to me is a tool that helps you prepare for the rest of your life. And it's quite funny for me to say that because I have no idea what's happening post Oxford just yet. But I think in the equality of outcome, what I mean is, regardless of who you were before you came to Oxford, or before you got into higher education, I think the equality of outcome of education means that education is the great leveler, whereby whoever you were before, if you take advantage of the opportunities that come your way, you can go into whatever you want to do post education. And I think that leads quite nicely onto the next question, which is, what difference has an education at St. Anne's had on my life? I think the first thing it's done, it's really broadened my horizons, in the sense that I think there's so much of the world that I didn't know about before I came to St. Anne's, and that St. Anne's has allowed me to access. And that comes by a couple of different ways. Firstly, through meeting a variety of people from very, very diverse backgrounds. And the second way is through just the broad range of activities that are on offer, like the number of things that you can get involved with, which has really helped me sort of understand what there is out there to do in the world on that front. And then I think the other thing that Oxford and more specifically St. Anne's has given me is a really deep appreciation for learning. And I think that's something that will stay with me for the rest of my life, regardless of where I end up. It's that sense of, even if I don't know how to do something when I go into it, just having that deep belief that I can figure it out, I think is probably the one lasting gift that St. Anne's will give me. But yeah, those are my questions. Those are my answers to the questions. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Helen Fraser. I read English at St. Anne's, graduating in 1970. I was educated at a small Midlands grammar school that hadn't sent anyone to Oxford for 20 years. I spent most of my working life, almost 4 decades, in publishing, ending up as the managing director of Penguin UK. I subsequently became chief executive of the Girls' Day School Trust for almost 7 years. It's a charity which owns and runs 26 schools in England and Wales and educates almost 20,000 girls aged from 4 to 18. I retired from there in 2016. The question of equality in education, never far from the headlines, has been brought to everyone's notice with the debacle in A-level results last month. An algorithm which seemed almost deliberately to downgrade the marks of disadvantaged pupils in less successful schools, and the numerous heartrending cases of individual sixth formers, made us all even more aware of the issue of inequality of opportunity at tertiary level. And in recent years, there's been huge pressure on the most prestigious UK universities to widen their social reach, to accept more students from impoverished or BA/ME families, and to do more outreach, which they are doing with increasing success. But the focus on social inequality at university entrance rather ignores the fact that there is inequality at the educational starting gate. Disadvantaged children start nursery with significantly lower cognitive skills than their more advantaged counterparts, and that gap widens as they move up through the school. Children who at the age of 3 have never seen a book or been read to come into classes where other children have been read to hundreds of times in their first years of life. The tools to access what the teacher and the school have to offer are not evenly distributed. So it does sometimes seem hard that the government expects universities, and particularly Oxford and Cambridge, to be the one place where 14 years of educational inequality can be remedied. However, Oxford and Cambridge and Russell Group universities have worked enormously hard in recent years to attract a wider and more diverse range of students. And many colleges, including St. Anne's, responded generously and thoughtfully to the A-level crisis ahead of the government's turnaround. When I was running the schools in the Girls' Day School Trust, I was naturally very focused on the issue of equality for girls and women. Paradoxically, we've made huge progress on this in recent decades. When I was at Oxford, there were 5 women's colleges and 26 men's, a ratio we reckoned of about 7 men to each woman undergraduate. Last year's Oxford undergraduate population was 54.4% women to 45.6% men, and there's a similar proportion in Russell Group universities also. But the issues that used to hold women back in education, institutional prejudice, lack of role models, inner confidence, now seem to have moved up a stage to the experience women have in the workplace, where we are still moving at a snail's pace towards equal pay and equal representation at the top of organisations. Maybe the experience of equality of presence for girls at universities is the first sign of better things to come for them in the wider world. My education at St Anne's has made an enormous difference to my life. As a publisher, it gave me confidence that while I might have forgotten my Anglo-Saxon or my Paradise Lost, I could deal with novelists, historians, academics, politicians who were at the very top of their profession, and not be afraid to tell them how their books could be improved. It gave me the courage to be bold with ideas, and not to take it personally if I got things wrong, since the intellectual life is one of constant revision and reassessment. One tutor told me, "You may not remember the issues we have discussed, but you will always know when the other guy is talking nonsense." Something so worth remembering in our age of fake news and political gaslighting. Most of all, my education has given me a lifelong curiosity and longing to continue to learn and discover new things. As Dick Smethurst, a former provost of Worcester College, said once, "A first-class education can give you an irreverence for learning that may lead to love." Thank you.
Hello, my name's David Royal, and I was at St Anne's between 2007 and 2011, and I studied French. I was lucky enough to live in college for most of my time. Spent my first year living in 2 Bevington Road, and then in the Clare Pally building, a third year abroad, and then finally in the Ruth Deach building in my 4th year. I made some amazing friends and had a great time at St Anne's, as I'm sure most of you watching this video also did. After I finished at college, I moved to London. Like so many, I got a graduate job working in technology consulting with Accenture. And then after a year there, I moved up to Newcastle, back to my hometown where I live now, still working with Accenture. For me, equality in education is really the foundation on which an equal society is built. It's so important in social mobility, in good life chances, in health and general well-being, and equal access to high quality education is fundamental to creating a fairer society, in my opinion. I think right now, with the rise of populism, the far right, fake news, and the skepticism with which experts are viewed, the need for good critical thinking skills and good education is really greater than ever. And as the recent exam results fiasco and the resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement shows, there are still so many people in our society for whom access to many spheres, including education, is not easy and is not on an equal footing. And really, it's why I am so grateful personally to not just St Anne's, but to the university for their continued focus on access and outreach and widening participation. Coming from a working class family in Newcastle, I went to a state comprehensive school. I wasn't really aware of university at all until relatively late on, when through the gifted and talented scheme at my school, I was invited to apply to a week-long summer school experience at St Catherine's College. I went along to that and immediately fell in love with the city. I had a taster of tutorials and seminars and lectures, and really for the first time felt like the thing that made me different and made me stand out in a negative way at my school was really prized and shared by the people I was with. And that was my passion for academic study and for learning. I then had another trip to Oxford and to Cambridge in sixth form, and that confirmed my love for the former, naturally, and then went on to do my interviews at St Anne's and spent a very wintry and nerve-wracking week in the Heartland Room, I think now the Dancing Room, in Heartland House. And after those interviews, I was really desperate to get in, and luckily I did get a place and spent an amazing time at the college. It went even quicker than the principal, Tim Gardam, said it would do in his opening lecture to us in Freshers' Week of first year. But really, 10 years on, it's really clear to me that the time that I spent at St Anne's in those first 4 years really was just the beginning of my lifelong connection to the college and to the alumni as well. Of course, I took away a degree and an education that has unlocked doors that would otherwise not have even been kind of on my radar, let alone open to me, certainly with my job. But more than that, a way of thinking that really challenged kind of my previous, probably quite black and white thinking, and showed me, and college really showed me, and my time with my tutors and my peers, that the world really isn't black and white at all, and there are just infinite shades of grey. It was an incredibly enriching experience, and one that I think about, it's not an exaggeration to say, on a daily basis. Through a really happy coincidence in my first year at my firm in London, when I was still there, I was put in touch with the London branch of the ASM, now the SAS, and that was through the Freshers Meetup that is hosted in Accenture's London offices every year under normal circumstances, obviously not during COVID-19. And I met some of the amazing alumni that run that branch and went for dinner with them afterwards, and they recruited me onto the committee where I've been in various different roles ever since, and now I'm the chair of the Northeast branch. And I'm incredibly grateful that happened, and that I was put in touch with the SAS when I was, because since then I've made some amazing friends from across the generations, and I'm always struck by just how interesting and unusual some of the lives of our alumni have been. And I think, like any family, the thing that strikes me every time I meet someone new is that even though we are incredibly diverse, and that is a huge strength, we also have so much in common.
Hello, my name's Amy, and I'm a second year French and Linguistics student at St Anne's, and I'm also the incoming JCR Women's representative for 2020 to 2021, and therefore part of our Equalities team. I'm grateful to be part of this video collation, and I hope I have something interesting to say. Beyond the concrete statistics and percentages of student intake regarding gender, race, sexual orientation, socioeconomic background, disability or any other factor, to me, educational equality is the idea that every student in an educational institution has the same opportunity to learn as their peers, unhindered by any factors beyond their own control. Whilst this may initially seem like a fairly abstract idea, I think that there are many more concrete factors which combine to ultimately help or hinder somebody's academic experience, such as their financial background, support they had from their schools when applying, or even whether or not they're a young carer. But also whether they feel welcome in the community that they're entering to study in. And I think that one of the things that sometimes gets overlooked is not how many students have we admitted from a more diverse array of backgrounds, but how do those students feel in the community that we've created for them to enter? This applies to all students, and I think that when people feel like they belong to the community that they're joining, then they're able to have a much more equal experience to their peers, who may have never had to worry about belonging or fitting in. It seems that when encouraging students to apply to Oxford from minority ethnic groups, LGBTQ+ students, students from more disadvantaged socioeconomic backgrounds, those who are care leavers, those who are disabled, in fact anyone who may have been disadvantaged in comparison to their peers. It needs to be made sure that they're not just being encouraged to join, so that the university have completed the task of diversifying their intake, but that we've also thought about how they'll feel when they get here. Whilst I'm sure that diversifying for the sake of it is not what's at the heart of Oxford University's ambition to diversify their undergraduate body, I do think we need to consider welfare and the community atmosphere when we encourage these students to join. Because I think that if you join an academic community like an Oxford College and you feel that you belong and you feel at home, then every student is able to have a far more equal experience. St Anne's was founded in 1879 as your home away from home, and I think we should remember the importance of that principal aim. For some students, this could be achieved through something concrete. It could be to do with the bursary scheme, accessibility to libraries or student accommodation, or even the presence of societies. But I think the general atmosphere of the community is crucially important. I feel proud to be a member of a college which not only strives to be more accessible to students from a disadvantaged background, but is also thoughtful of their experiences once they arrive. To discuss what difference an education at St Anne's has made to my life, whilst I've only had the pleasure of being at college for 2 short terms so far, I'm already proud to be part of the college community, and I look forward to not only the remaining years of my time at Oxford, but also to see what doors St Anne's will be able to open once I graduate. The aspect of the St Anne's education which most stands out for me is the connections that I've been able to make with other people in the college community. Whilst the concept of an Oxford degree can be and was quite intimidating, St Anne's has aptly enough turned into a home away from home for me, and that is down to the people who make up the college community. I also think that being a student at St Anne's has given me the confidence to believe in my own academic ability, not to mention the fact that an education at Oxford definitely instills an appreciation for the power of hard work. Educational equality has inarguably progressed for women, and I'm so proud to represent the undergraduate women of St Anne's this year. It's amazing to belong to our college, which acted so significantly on inequalities at the time. I hope that the same progress can be made for others as we continue to level the playing field in a way which facilitates students from all backgrounds to equally enjoy their university experience and feel at home where they study. In short, I'm grateful to be here, and I hope that as a college we're able to continue to foster the welcoming community that we already have, but to also make sure we continue to improve where we need to work towards an educational experience which is as equal as it possibly can be. Thank you for listening, and I hope that everyone has been able to stay safe and well during these uncertain times.
Hello, my name is Christine Kire. I was at St Anne's College from the year 1997 until the year 2000. I was studying preclinical medicine. To me, equality of access to education for women and men is something that's incredibly important, and that's for a number of different reasons. First and foremost, it means not having limits imposed on one's academic or professional potential just because one is a woman. This is something that is of personal importance to me because I come from a family of girls. I have 3 sisters, and I'm so grateful that my parents never ever made my sisters or I feel limited in terms of what we could achieve just because of being female. When I came to Oxford, I was really pleased to have tutors and lecturers who shared a similar mindset to my parents, because at a later stage after I left Oxford, I encountered roadblocks being put in my professional career because of being a woman for the very first time. And I was able to overcome these because of the different perspective with which I'd been raised and educated whilst I was at Oxford. I think that an education goes beyond just the act of learning, be it by sitting in a lecture theatre or writing an essay or sitting in a tutorial room. An education, as we all know, is much broader than that. And one of the aspects of it that I think is particularly important is the opportunity to develop networks, both personal and professional networks, which we all come to depend on at different stages of our lives and careers. Men have had access to these types of networks for a very, very long time, and it's important that women do too, because women do need the same kind of support in their personal and professional lives that men have had access to for so long. I think it's important that women sit at the table, that they have a voice, and that they contribute to the dialogue on any important subject. I think that this can take place at any stage, so even at the undergraduate level of education, if not before, as well as the postgraduate and even expert levels, because women bring a unique perspective to a conversation. They generally have a different view from a male-only view, at least in most situations that's the case. And so the inclusion of women in these sorts of conversations enriches the conversations, and I think it's of benefit for everyone. Lastly, I would say that one of the main reasons why equality of education is important for women is because it gives women greater freedom. By that I mean that an educated woman is freer to live a full life, to enjoy the arts, to enjoy literature, to contribute to those fields, to have a career or vocation. And I think that an educated woman is a different sort of woman from an uneducated woman. She makes a different kind of friend, a different kind of partner, a different kind of mother. Perhaps one who has greater knowledge and depth of insight, perhaps one who's got a greater breadth of experience. Perhaps she's more confident as a result of her education. And I think none of these things should be underestimated. I was also asked to say something about what difference in education at St Anne's College has made to my life. I have to start by saying that coming to St Anne's to study preclinical medicine has been one of the greatest privileges of my life. And I really owe my tutor, Dr. Stuart Judge, who saw something in me when I was 17. He could see the potential in me before I could even see the potential in myself. And he opened the doors for me to be able to come and study preclinical medicine at St Anne's. And that has opened my whole professional world right up. Coming to Oxford can feel very weighty and quite overwhelming. And I'm sure there's a lot that I didn't understand about the university and the institution I was coming to at that stage. I had a wonderful time at St Anne's. I had some real academic highs, but also some academic lows. And I think that I grew the most actually through the academic lows. What I'm referring to is the fact that in my first year at St Anne's, I was still just getting to know the university, getting to know my subject, getting to know new friends, and really having a wonderful time. I wasn't particularly conscientious, and so I was particularly surprised when prelims came around and I seemed to do really well, much better than I was expecting, and I ranked somewhere near the top for medicine in my year. So I went into my second year with very high expectations of myself. I thought of how much better I could do if I was more diligent and conscientious and, wrote better essays. And so I worked very, very hard for my second year exams. Yes, in medicine we have exams in second year as well as prelims. And for some reason it backfired. So in spite of my best efforts, I somehow ended up failing an exam for the first time in my life. Now, that was my first taste of failure, as I already mentioned, and if any of you has ever experienced anything like that, or if any of you went through something similar at the age of 19, especially if you had a background of success upon success prior to that, you'll understand that that was a big deal to me, and I was quite upset at the time. And I just remember how my tutor, Stuart Judge, was incredibly supportive. He was unwavering, in fact, in his support for me. And he helped me to process what had happened and to pick myself up and to plan the best way forward. I think that the nature of the college that you're in also can affect an experience like that. And it was at that time that I saw how amazingly supportive the St Anne's learning environment was. Of course, I had my friends and my family to encourage me and to try to pick me up, but it meant a lot to me to have my tutor, who had shown this amazing belief in me from the beginning, continue to support me, and to have the support of my peers, the other medical students who I'd been in tutorials with, and a physiology student who I'd been in tutorials with, and even medical students from the year above me, actually reach out and encourage and support me. It felt like an incredible professional family around me, and that really helped to cushion me in that time of need. I think I matured a lot through that experience. I had a better approach to exams after that, which was handy because in medicine there are a lot of exams to get through. And I think it set me off on a really good road professionally. I had a better perspective on my life, on my education, on what was necessary for exams, and I was able to progress with maturity and to go on to have a very successful career to date anyway. I think that in education at St Anne's also gave me real credibility. There's no one who is not impressed when they ask where I studied medicine and I mention St Anne's College. And it's such a privilege to have studied at a place that you can be so proud of, a place where, people are unquestioning about the quality of education that you've received. St Anne's is a place where I learned to think critically, where I learned to read scientific papers, and where I learned to write scientific papers as well. And these are skills that I still draw on to this day as a consultant ophthalmologist. And so St Anne's has been such an important part of my professional development. I'm amazed that now, 20 years after I finished at St Anne's, I'm amazed that I can still have contact with the college and a connection with the college and contribute to discussions like this. Thank you, St Anne's, for everything that you've done for me.
Hello, my name is Adrian Fresco, and I graduated from St Anne's in experimental psychology in 1978. I initially worked for Citibank in human resources, eventually becoming VP in Europe and in the US for some of the businesses. Then, alongside developing a consulting practice, I was privileged to serve on a number of public sector and charity boards as chair or vice chair, with a focus on health and, more recently, education. Through this, I developed a specialist interest in good governance. Although now retired, I currently serve on the Council of the University of Sussex as vice chair. I'm also a proud grandma of 2 toddlers. So what does quality or equality of education mean to me? It's only in recent years, the last 10 or so, that I have really thought about and understood how vital equality of education is. This may sound rather unimpressive, but in my defence, much of my professional career has been in and around health and issues related to health inequalities. It was one of the areas I really focused on when I was chairman of Croydon Health Authority in the 1990s. I developed a pretty good understanding of the underlying determinants of health inequality, which were as much or even more about poverty, housing, unemployment, race, as they were to do with access to healthcare. In Croydon, health inequalities were stark. Life expectancy differences were as high as 15 years between different parts of the borough. In my governance roles, there were very few women serving on these boards, and certainly very few BAME board members. I could certainly see that when boards were diverse, they really were more effective in making balanced decision-making. This informed the development of my consulting practice in good governance, with a significant focus on diversity. So what in the last 10 years has caused me to become much more attuned to educational inequality and its importance? Well, there are a number of reasons. Firstly, my older daughter studied SPSS at Cambridge. She didn't even consider Oxford, and became very interested in educational disadvantage. So much so that she decided to become a teacher through the very excellent Teach First scheme. I saw through her eyes the enormous challenges that many children have to face, whether because of their ethnicity, poverty, difficult family backgrounds, lack of role models, poor previous schooling, low aspiration, or lack of confidence. The list goes on. I could see the link to my previous experience in tackling health inequalities. When the opportunity to serve on the Council of the University of Sussex came up 7 years ago, I jumped at it. Sussex has really focused on supporting first-generation scholars and in accepting and supporting students from low participation neighbourhoods. Sussex's one-year foundation degree programme is also an excellent way of enabling students who haven't reached their potential to prepare for and have the confidence to achieve well at full degree level. I know that St Anne's and Oxford is really making great strides in widening participation too. So yes, there is a great deal that universities can do to support and tackle educational inequalities, but it isn't enough. We really need to understand all the systemic reasons contributing to inequalities and then make sure that support and interventions are really targeted at these. From my experience, research, and from talking to those who are in the thick of it, here are my top 5 issues that need to be tackled. Firstly, unequal access to top quality early years care, including encouraging vocabulary development and love of reading. Through my grandchildren, I've seen how incredibly developmental early years care can be. Secondly, primary schools' funding per child is very unequal, making it more difficult to provide targeted support to children who start school behind others. Thirdly, aspiration, or lack of it, in some communities. This is less of an issue with some immigrant communities who tend to be aspirational, but even talented students often express "Oxbridge is not for me" sentiments. Fourthly, a lack of BAME role models, including at leadership level in school and universities, and indeed some evidence of unconscious bias by some teachers at all levels. And then fifthly, lower performing schools struggle to recruit and retain the best teachers. This whole A-level and GCSE exam fiasco has demonstrated how disadvantaged students are affected by the schools they go to. So finally, thank you to St Anne's for the significant difference your education has made to me. It raised my aspirations, it stretched me intellectually, it developed my confidence, it opened doors, and it gave me lifelong friends. Thank you.